Hey folks, I want to show you a quick demonstration of DBmaestro and UrbanCode working together. One of the things that we bring to the table at DBmaestro is automation for the database, essentially bringing DevOps to the database. And one of the reasons that the database is so special in terms of DevOps and automation is that unlike application code, there is no build to essentially move the code between environments inside of a database. And typically there is a hole in the DevOps pipeline where that exists. So, we hear from people all the time where they have automated their application deployments to be able to do hundreds or even thousands of them a month. The database still has to wait. One of the other reasons for this is that DBAs and folks involved in this process put a lot of effort into making sure that the database changes are safe. In addition to having difficulty automating and moving those changes from pipeline, from dev, QA to production, you also have to check to see if any of the code will either lose any data or have some security risks. These things need to be tested and built just like anything else in your pipeline, and that's what DBmaestro aims to bring you. And using the power of UrbanCode with DBmaestro can link those things for you and really give your DBAs and the rest of your team a sense of safety, confidence, and control over how that process works. So as I start out in the demo, as you can see, this is an UrbanCode deploy dashboard. And here I have a dev, QA, and production environment set up. You notice on each environment, I have three pieces of my application that I'm deploying. I have my database piece, I have some web stuff, and I have some Java code that I have to deploy. And I've orchestrated all those in UrbanCode already, and you can see on the screen here, I can see what version number I have deployed. And you'll notice for the database, I have version 1.1 deployed. And currently what I did in my repository here, in my Git repositories, I actually checked in several scripts that I wanted to run in my test environment as a developer. And those changes went up and were put into UrbanCode. And I can go ahead and actually see here's the script change that I've put into that. And we've aligned that with DBmaestro. So essentially what you have here is now a version number for the scripts that I'm going to deploy. But what's more important is DBmaestro is also tracking all of the databases behind that component in this environment. So you can see in my DBmaestro environment, I have mirrored my setup in UrbanCode, so it matches my application process. I'm just going to switch between these two, but they're both web interfaces, but you can see I have a dev, QA, and production pipeline set up here with different versions that are installed, and I have the same thing going on here in DBmaestro also. Now, what that means is using our plugin that I have designed here. So if you go in here and you kind of look in our database process and just showing how that's linked, if you download the DBmaestro UrbanCode plugin, you'll see all the DBmaestro commands are available for you to hear. I have a simple upgrade command that I've put in here, but we have everything from building, deploying, and setting up all that code to fill in that gap for you. So let me give you a quick use case here. What I'm going to do is go ahead and do a deployment here of the database to this particular environment. You can see in DBmaestro version 1.5 is currently deployed to my dev environment. I'm just going to go ahead and click the deploy button here in UrbanCode, and you're going to see that process get kicked off. And because of that integration, I have linked the version numbers of what is possible to deploy here from DBmaestro and UrbanCode, and we've kept that in sync. So I want to deploy version 1.6. which is the current build of my database that I want to deploy. And real quick, what does that mean, the DBmaestro? Well, I'll go in here and take a look at that package in DBmaestro, how DBmaestro organizes things. But someone has submitted, a developer wants to alter a particular table, and DBmaestro has called that version 1.6. So we're going to go ahead and actually do that deployment here. All right. So if I go ahead and do that deployment, I'll click through. Okay, so what you'll see here, as expected, UrbanCode is going to go off and kick off that deployment. You'll see the same process running here in DBmaestro. You can see that's been kicked off using our integration. And again, DBmaestro is not only running the deployment, but also logging all the results here. So you'll be able to see them on this screen as it happens also. So it's all logged. None of the information that you have to, I think this is an important thing here, but as you're using these tools, the idea is that we can expose these portions of the database deployments to different audiences. So if developers or DevOps people want to use UrbanCode to go ahead and orchestrate that, that's fine. Well, DBmaestro kind of does all the hard work in the background there, and that's what you can see. Now, one of the hardest things to do with the database is actually figure out what is currently deployed in each environment and keep track of that. This is also not only about automation, but also about environment tracking and keeping these environments in sync. And one of the things that DBmaestro does really well is detect if there are any differences in any of these environments that are unwanted environments. But let's talk about what happens when things go wrong. Another thing we typically see in the database world is that people submit bad changes. People have changes that need to be reviewed by a DBA. And we want to take a pause in the process here, or even identify those problems before they happen inside of our pipeline. And what I've done in this particular case is I've created a new package as a developer. I've gone ahead and checked in a new version of my code here. And what you can actually see is I have two different scripts that are part of this deployment. And if I actually were to go and look in these scripts, I'll just go into DBmaestro real quick. You'll actually see I have some bad code. So I have a couple things in here. I have misspelled some of the words here for my syntax set up in my table. I also am dropping a table that my DBA does not want me to drop. And the point I'm trying to make here is that DBmaestro is going to put some controls over how those things happen in these environments. So if I were to go to this dev environment, and as a CI/CD practice, almost like a dry run of your deployment or a pre-flight build, if you will, from back in the day, you'll hit OK here. If I go ahead and do this deployment, what's going to happen is DBmaestro is actually going to go out and is going to perform what we call a pre-run. And what you'll see here is that DBmaestro is actually going to go into this pre-run environment. It is going to test my script for me based on the last good deployment. So whatever was in that dev environment before, DBmaestro is going to actually test the scripts before it runs so that I don't damage that environment before the tests actually happen or the scripts run. But it's also going to check for me if anything in that package or anything in that script was something that my DBA didn't want to happen, using some of our policies and some of our rules that are built in. So you can see here, DBmaestro has actually stopped this deployment from happening. It doesn't like my syntax, but it also doesn't like these particular actions that I'm taking here where I'm trying to drop a table. So you'll actually see in this pre-run, based on some of the rules that we have in DBmaestro, that DBAs can tightly control using our policies over 140 different things in terms of things like losing data, execution plans, performance, security policies. Someone tries to give themselves DBA access or purge data in the wrong way, your DBA is going to know about it. And if we think about this, being able to open this up and offer it as a self-service to the rest of your development community and the rest of the teams, you're able to use these policies in this pre-check to help you orchestrate that deployment. And you can see here in DBmaestro and UrbanCode, we've actually recorded those results, and now they can go in and actually do an approval. So you can see here this has failed. If I go back into DBmaestro, your developer's doing this, and of course this can be automated also through UrbanCode also, but if you go in here, I can actually approve these code changes. Again, can be done through UrbanCode or even a ticketing system. My DBA now approves those changes. I can now move forward, and I have all that information I need to change the code, approve the code, see any dangerous actions as they happen. Now, one other thing I'll show you is that DBmaestro also records not only the script changes as you migrate them forward, but DBmaestro is also recording, and I mentioned this before, all of the changes in each one of these environments using that drift. And what we've done in our integration is also expose that as part of the database deployments, if you will. So if I were to, let's say, snapshot one of these environments and then compare my snapshots, using these two environments, and I can actually see in my component versions, DBmaestro is actually going to be able to show me what those code changes were. So actually, let me get back to a different place here. All right, compare these two snapshots, October release with the April release. Now you'll see that these two versions that were deployed, if I take a close look, DBmaestro here and UrbanCode have actually shown me what the configuration history is in there. But if I go into even a deeper version of this component, let's say this one, you'll see that DBmaestro has actually recorded all the procedures, tables, sequences, and views. This is all available for me as part of my snapshots, and this is the working model of what my entire database should look like, not just the 1 or 2 script changes we put in there as part of that deployment. So, just to summarize, DBmaestro plus UrbanCode together gives you the ability to statefully see what's installed in each one of your environments, automatically roll back that code if you need to, test for policies and checks for your DBAs to control the changes, and even do a dry run of that database code before it's deployed, and then also give you some cool dashboards and information to look that you can hook up to UrbanCode Velocity if you need to be able to see where you are in that process, completing the full picture, and essentially bringing your DBAs and developers together in a DevOps way. Thank you for your time.